All toy restorations will be handled by the YouTubers controlling each channel. Reproduction parts may not be used where there are Star Wars forums. Toy restorers and collectors are available. Toy-polloi has been assigned.
Welcome to toy-polloi. No Legos were harmed in the making of this video.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and this is part 2 of the restoration of this vintage Masters of the Universe Fright Zone. In part 1 I gave the set a really thorough clean. I managed to fix the jail cell door and locking mechanism, and I also managed to get the spring-loaded trap working. Now in part 2 we're going to fix all of those final issues. So we need to fix up some new clips to hold the set together. We need to make a new snake because at the moment you can see there's just an empty hole there, and we do also need to sort out the tree because I've got a couple of trees with broken branches on them, so we're going to go and try and fix those as well. But the first thing I want to do is make some new clips so that this set is actually properly held together. The side of this set should be held together by 2 clips. You can see there should be one here and a matching one on the other side. And these are made of a bendy plastic and had a flexible plastic hinge. Over the years, those plastic hinges always break. In fact, they are used on quite a few toys, and every single toy that has that plastic hinge, that is just a weak point and they tend to snap. And so once they've snapped, they become pretty useless. In fact, you'll more often see these sets with those missing completely, like this one here. So what I thought I would do is make something new that would clip into these holes that are left on the side and hold the set together. So I've already made a prototype of my plan, which is this. It looks like a flat panel. If we turn it over though, you can see there is some clips and a little sort of peg on the back of it. And this is something I've just sort of made up based on the shape of the holes that are left in the playset. But it does actually seem to do quite a good job. I've made this out of 2mm styrene sheet and a little piece of a plastic post here. And what happens is this back section has 2 clips on it, and that clips into the holes on this side, and then the post fits neatly into the hole on the front. And you can see if I clip this in like so, it clips in quite nicely, and now the set is held together pretty well on this side. And if you want to remove it, all you've got to do is put your fingers inside the set and push on the 2 clips that are there, loosen it up, and it pops out. So today we are going to make another one of these to clip on the other side, and I'll show you exactly how I went about producing it, and then you can make them for your own set. And it does really seem to make quite a big difference. Without it, this set is very easy to pull apart. As you can see, once we've got the clips in place, everything should be held quite firmly. So let's get making. So this is the clip I've made, and we will be making exactly the same thing again to fit in this side. All I did was take measurements from the set, so you don't actually need one of these clips to start with. You can make all the measurements from the set itself and just get cutting using some 2mm styrene sheet. So this is what I'm using. This is 2mm thick black styrene sheet. You can get this from model shops or you can buy it on eBay. As you can see, I've already marked up a few of the pieces I'm going to be cutting just to make this a bit of a quicker process. So what you need to measure is this sort of gap here. So you can see there's an indentation. We're going to make an oblong piece that fits inside that indentation. So all I did was I measured that distance there, which is about 52mm long, and then we measure the height here. So if I measure that, we can see that that is about 27mm. So I need an oblong piece of this 2mm styrene, 52 by 27. So you can see that is the piece that I have cut here. So I've already scored this with a knife, and now I can easily snap this off using a pair of pliers or just bending the styrene sheet. You've seen me do this in multiple projects, so I'm not going to go through the whole process again. There you go. Once you've scored the plastic, it's very easy to snap. So we snap that piece as well. So we now have a piece of styrene that should be roughly the right size to fit in there, which it is. Now that I've got this, I can tidy up the edges just with a file. I'll round the corners, and that's the first piece that we need for making this new clip. Now that we have this first piece cut, we need to cut another piece that we're going to stick onto the back of this that fits inside this area here. Now we don't actually need to have these top little notches. What we need is this sort of main square section in the middle. So I'm going to cut a square piece that fits in there exactly. Again, we can just measure this. So we can see that's about 23mm by, what are we going to say, about 20mm. So if I cut a square that's 23 by 20 or slight oblong, then I can stick that onto the back of here, and when it goes on here, it'll start to be held in place. The 2 little notches top and bottom, we are going to make some clips to go in those. So for now, we just need that square section. So again, I've already marked that up on a piece of styrene here. I've just got to break this styrene and we will have the piece that I need. Sometimes with smaller pieces you'll need a pair of pliers just to snap the styrene, but there we go. So we now have this smaller piece, and that should fit neatly in that little gap there, which it does. So again, I'm going to tidy up the edges of that, and we can plastic weld it onto the back of here. We're starting to get the sort of main part of this new tab. Before we stick these two pieces together, we need to make sure that this panel is going to go in exactly the right place. So what we do is we take the bigger panel and sort of line it up onto the main part of the Fright Zone. We turn this over. Now I'm just going to get a pencil, and I'm going to draw inside the sort of area that I want to glue this. So I've got a sort of line, a little guide. It doesn't need to be massively accurate, but you want some sort of marking on there. You can see there we go, got a little bit of a marking. So I now know that this piece needs to be glued about there. We do have a little bit of sort of leeway. When you put the plastic weld on, you have a sort of few minutes that you can move it around. So I'll stick this on and sort of hold it up to the toy and make sure everything is lined up. But that will give us the first part of this clip. So let's get this plastic welded in place. Now we need to make the clips that clip inside the side of the Fright Zone. You can see on this one that I've made here, I've made these little clips that look much like the clips you get on a lot of toys. They're fairly straightforward to make. Again, you just need a 2mm piece of styrene. I've measured the depth they need to clip in, so I've got this piece of plastic here which is the right width, which is about 11mm, so it fits nicely in there. And the depth of this varies a little bit, so I'm calling it sort of 8mm. So what I've done is I marked that is 8mm from the top, and that is 8mm from the bottom. To make this little clip section, what we need to do is in that middle piece I'm going to stick a piece of 1mm styrene. So this is 1mm styrene, same stuff, it's black but it's only 1mm thick. I can stick that in the middle. I'll then cut this piece in half, and I can taper the ends to make them look more angled like this, but it's quite easy to do just using a piece of 2mm styrene and a piece of 1mm styrene. So if I stick a piece in that middle section there, and then we'll cut this in half, we can then shape those and make the clips quite easily. So let me cut a piece of this, we'll plastic weld it in place, and then we can get shaping. There are the two tabs ready. As you can see, I've tapered the ends of both of these. So now we need to stick these onto the main plate that we've created so that the tabs are pointing outwards. You can see from the hole in the playset that the tabs need to go at the far end of this. So basically we just have to line them up with the far end of the piece of plastic that we've stuck on, and plastic weld them in place just there. We'll do the same with the other one on the other side. Let everything dry for about 10 minutes, and then we can test this in the set and make sure that it actually clips in place. So let's get these attached. I've now got a panel that fits quite snugly into the back section of the Fright Zone. The final thing I need to do is make something that attaches into this hole on the floor of the Fright Zone, and for that I'm using this piece of plastic. This is just a bit of scrap plastic that came in a pair of shoes. I think it's supposed to be a sort of shoehorn or something like that, but I've got quite a few of these and I've used them in various projects, and it just happens to fit perfectly into that hole. You can see that I can fit that in and it's a very snug fit. So you'll need to find something that sort of matches. I'm assuming you can buy a sort of a plastic rod or something from a model shop. Rods like this are very useful to keep, and you can buy them in all sorts of sizes, but generally I try and keep bits of scrap plastic from sort of things that we get in and things that we buy, because they're always very useful. So what I've done is I've cut a small piece of that off. I've already marked with a pencil where it's got to go, so I'm going to plastic weld that onto there, and then we will have our final clip and I'll show you it working. Once we're happy that everything works, I'm going to give it a coat of paint, and that will hide all of these marks where the plastic weld is. You can see that I've sort of put quite a liberal amount of plastic weld on just to make this nice and strong, but by the time we've painted that you won't even notice that is there. So let's get this small piece attached, and then that will be the final clip. It's now had time to dry, and we can give this a full test. So you can see here are the two sections of the Fright Zone. I can push this clip in place and it should all line up quite nicely, and that is now nice and firmly held together. By the time we've painted this, I think it will blend in quite nicely. The paints I'm going to use are just sort of aerosol cans that I happen to have, so I'll give it a quick undercoat, which is this grey colour. Then I have a sort of camouflage green, which is not a perfect match, but then the original clips were actually a sort of beige colour, and they sort of stand out quite a lot, so I'm thinking a camouflage green will look quite nice. And then on top of that I'm going to spray a clear coat just to give it this sort of slight bit of a shine. I'm not going to spray the inside too much. You can see I've just got a bit of the undercoat showing there, because it's really the outside that I want to look nice. But that will give us a very nice looking clip. So you can see to remove this I just have to press on the inside and it will unclip, and there we go. That is the clip all finished. I think that's going to work very nicely. So yeah, let's give this a quick coat of paint. Right, they are now both painted. So that's the original one I made. This is the new one. Unfortunately, I did touch the paint with my finger just before it dried, so I've left a little finger mark there. I may come back and sand that down, but the overall effect is they look pretty reasonable. So let's put these on the set and I'll show you it all clipped together. So we clip one in on this side, clip that in. You can see that holds in place quite nicely. We'll turn the set a bit, and then we can clip the other clip that I've just made. We clip that in that side, and now you can see I can lift the playset up, move it around, and it is firmly held together. And I think that's a pretty reasonable result. It's certainly not going anywhere, and it means that you can move this about quite nicely. And then if we want to take this apart, we just, as I say, have to push on the inside, and these clips come out like that, and we can take it apart again. So they work really nicely. They are fairly straightforward to make. They take, you know, 5 to 10 minutes each. Just requires some 2mm styrene and a bit of plastic weld, and we've got clips that do the job. So I'm happy with that. Let's move on to the next part of this restoration. Now, one thing that's always missing from the Fright Zone is the hand puppet of the snake. That's because the hand puppet is made out of a sort of latex rubber, and over the years that rubber has perished and it just falls apart. So the Fright Zone without the hand puppet is basically just a hand. It doesn't look that great. So I wanted to try and find a modern replacement for that. And having a quick search on eBay, I was able to buy this, and it doesn't look like much, but this is actually a snake puppet. It's made out of a latex rubber, and it's got the same sort of naive quality as the original one. I thought it actually looks quite good. You can see it's a fairly sort of convincing looking snake. The only problem with it for me is it's just painted quite badly. It's painted in this sort of yellowy green finish, and it has sort of strangely painted dark green eyes with little white spots on them. So I thought really this was a good starting point for a puppet. All it needs is a new coat of paint. So I'm just going to be painting this with acrylic paint. I've done a few little tests on it just to see what would happen. I've actually painted a bit of green on this side, so you can see it's a little bit more green, and that actually works quite well. So this is just green acrylic paint, the same sort of stuff that I paint Star Wars figures with. And I've also had a go at removing some of the paint from it, so you can see there should have been a white dot on this side as well. same as it is on this eye. Actually, you can just pick the original paint off. It comes off quite easily if you just sort of scratch it with a nail. So I'm going to remove some of the bits of paint like that so that I can just sort of start again, start afresh, and try and paint this to look a little bit more in keeping with how the original one was painted. Obviously this doesn't look much like the original one, but I think by the time it's painted up, because of the sort of naive quality of how it has been sort of made and painted, it will do the job and it will look quite nice and sort of quite in keeping with the style of the playset. So really all I've got to do is get painting. As I say, I'm going to be using some acrylic paint. I've not really got a plan as to what I'm going to do. I'm just going to paint this and see if I can make it look more snake-like and more like the Fright Zone snake. And if you want to get this for yourself, I just went onto eBay and searched for snake hand puppet, and this was the first one that came up. It's got very little information on it. It came with this sort of bit of copyright information. It's made by H. Grossman Limited, and they are in Glasgow, it says here. So it's actually a UK produced toy, but it looks like you can probably get this all over the world. There are various ones sort of available. So just have a quick look on eBay and see what you can get. And here is the painted up snake head. As you can see, I think the style of it actually suits rather well with this Fright Zone. It's not a perfect representation, as we well know, because the original didn't look anything like that. And the original is actually quite a sort of naff looking snake as it is. So this just fits quite nicely in it. I'm glad that I was able to paint it, because the yellow colour that was originally underneath it didn't look great at all. Adding the green on top really has made quite a difference. Even though you can see bits of the yellow through, I think it actually looks a whole lot better like that. As you saw, I also repainted the eyes, so they're now a sort of a bright golden yellow with a red outer. Some of the paint is already chipping a little bit, but then the original paint on this toy that I bought was quite chipped and is easily removed, so maybe there's a better paint to use, but for now it's certainly quite displayable. Maybe in future I'll find a better version of a rubber snake puppet that I can swap out, or maybe you have some suggestions. If you do, then leave some comments below this video and let me know what you think about this snake and whether there's a better one out there. Now we move on to the tree, and this seems to suffer with the same problem across all of the ones I've got here. At least I have 3 different ones, as you can see, and they all seem to have broken in about the same place. So on this one here you can see that this branch is missing, and it's always this branch that seems to have the most damage on it. So on this one, missing completely. On this one here, the end of that branch has snapped off, and I'm going to say someone has stood on this because it looks like it's been crushed and previously glued with something, so there's quite a lot of damage around here, and this branch here has been glued quite badly. Also, one of the birds is missing on this one, and then we have this one over here, which again you can see the end of that branch is missing. In fact, it's broken in pretty much the same place as that one, so obviously there's a weak point on that branch. This is the one we're going to use because it has the least damage on it. Now I've already done a little bit of fixing on this because there was a crack up here just where the top branch attaches, and it's not broken completely through, but certainly looks like that it's going to have potential for breaking in the future. So what I've done is I've actually very carefully put super glue in that crack using a pin. So you basically get a small amount of super glue on a bit of paper and carefully spot the super glue onto the crack, and capillary action will pull it into the crack, and then I've let that set for a day, which is why I've done it previously to filming this, and that has now set really quite solidly, and I don't think that is going to go anywhere. It seems that this plastic is sort of turning quite brittle as the years go by, so I imagine there'll be more cracks appearing in this one. You can see there's a slight crack at the front, but for now, putting that super glue in and letting it set, that's really gone quite firm, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere or sort of break any more. I may end up putting a little bit more super glue in just to build that up, and then I can paint over it so you won't actually see a crack there. But to be honest, there's so much detail going on with this tree you can barely see it anyway. So how this tree is supposed to work is there are two levers at the bottom, and these are in the back of the set, and you squeeze those levers together and the branches spring round and grab a figure, and then you let go and it is a spring loaded piece, so it sort of springs back and releases the figure. It's quite a nice sort of effect. All we're going to do today is mend this missing piece of the tree, and in actual fact I do have it. Somewhere on my desk here is the missing piece of the tree, which I think is that piece there. So you can see we need to reattach that. If you don't have that, then I'm going to in a minute show you a method of making that. But let's clear the desks and then we'll start fixing this up. So here I have the tree on its own, and we are going to be reattaching this broken piece of the branch. You can't just glue it on, it's just not going to be strong enough. A small amount of glue on an area like that with a big piece like this, it will just be able to be pushed and it will snap off. So we need to put some support in there. So I'm going to be drilling a couple of holes and inserting a small piece of paperclip. I will do 2 holes, so there's 2 bits of paperclip, so you can't sort of twist the tree branch round. The trick is going to be lining them up because this is not a particularly clean break. You can see the sort of angle that it is broken there, and if I turn this over, the back is even more awkward. It's really got quite an odd shape to it, so drilling 2 holes that line up is going to be quite tricky. Now if you have a tree where you don't have the missing part, what I would suggest you do is drill a couple of holes into it, insert a few bits of paperclip and shape those to be however you want the branches to be. You can see that's how the original branch is. And then sculpt on top of it using milliput. And you'll have seen in a recent video me doing exactly that to remake Battle Cat's tail. So this Battle Cat was missing the end of his tail. I'm going to put a link to that video at the end of this one. Follow that and basically do exactly the same for making the branch on this. But as I have the branch, I don't need to do it. But this would be the way I would go about it if I didn't have the missing piece. So let's start drilling some holes and we'll try and reattach the broken part of the tree branch. In my pin vise I have a small drill bit which is the same diameter as the paper clip, and now the trick is, as I say, I've got to drill 2 holes into this and also to the main part of the tree stump there that line up so that when we push the branch back in place it all matches. It's going to be quite difficult. I may not be able to get it as perfect as I like, but I'm certainly going to give it a good go. So let's get drilling some holes. Okay, so I now have 2 bits of paperclip holding this on. If you see, I can pull this out and there are 2 pieces of paperclip stuck in that broken piece of branch, and those line up quite neatly with the 2 holes on the main part of the branch, and I can push that in. And even without gluing, that actually holds in place pretty well. But I will be gluing this, and I'm going to be using two types of glue. I have Loctite precision glue, which is one that deals with all sorts of surfaces, so it will glue metal to plastics, and that's what we're going to use to glue the metal piece into this broken branch. And then I have super glue all plastics, and we're going to be using that for the final piece of joining the two plastic parts together. I think it's going to sort of make a nice firm bond. Also, once this is done, there will be a slight gap in it, as you saw. It doesn't line up quite as perfectly as I would hope. There is going to be a slight gap there, but then I can do exactly what I've done with this crack on the top branch here and just use capillary action to pull some super glue in, and then I will tidy that up afterwards. So I'm going to do sort of two-part gluing of this. We'll glue the main part on using the super glue, the Loctite Precision. Once that's set, I will then do some of the all plastic stuff on it as well, just to sort of finish it off. But you can see, just like that, it's already looking quite good. So let's get this glued in place. Sometimes when you do repairs like this, you get a little bit of a sort of white line where the glue is. So I've just taken some time to add a little bit of paint over those. You can see that's where the crack is. A little bit of paint, and I think it's hidden pretty well. The one at the top here as well that I showed you, that's hidden really quite nicely. I think mainly because that one, the actual crack sort of follows the lines of the bark. But you can see there's barely anything visible there. If I turn this over, you can see on the back again, there is the crack. So yes, pretty nicely hidden. And the one here, I've not managed to get the colour quite a perfect match, but I think it's perfectly acceptable considering this is the back of the toy. The front of it is really good. I think you'd be hard pushed to notice that that had been repaired. I've used quite a few paints, so I'm not going to go through every single one, but basically a good mixture of paints. So I've got some greens here. That was an olive green. I've got gold yellow. I mix those two together and you get a sort of sludgy colour. So I've added a bit of this, which is red brown. Then I've also added a bit of black to darken it down. It's just a right mix of colours to get something that is this sort of sludgy green colour, and I don't think there's a perfect way of doing it, so just mix what you have until you've got something that is as close as you can get, which is often just the way when it comes to mixing paints. So use what you've got and mix until you get something that's close, but the overall effect I'm really pleased with. And so here it is. This is the finished Fright Zone playset, and I think it's looking really good. It took quite a long time to fix up, as you saw, just because there were so many little pieces that needed fixing, but it was well worth doing because the playset now actually feels pretty strong. It will hold together really very nicely, and I do have to say I quite like the snake. I know it doesn't look much like the original snake, but I actually think it really suits the sort of whole overall style of this playset, and in time maybe I'll find a better one, or maybe people can suggest a better one. As I said, leave your comments below if you know of a better snake that I can use on this playset. But for now, I think that works really quite nicely, and it does suit the style of this sort of 1980s playset. I have to say a massive thank you to Peter, who very kindly sent the remains of this playset, and also to Bass, who helped me out with one of the trees, and also to Lawrence from Toy Planet UK, who sent me another of the broken trees. So thanks to all those guys for helping out. If you've enjoyed this video, then why not check out some of my other toy restoration projects. I've done quite a few Masters of the Universe videos over the years, so check all of those out. If you've really enjoyed it, then why not hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.